On October 12, 2024, at 11:40 a.m., 32-year-old Anthony Willis and his 30-year-old fiancée Becky Hunt set out on a multi-day trek through the rugged highlands of Tibet. Their route took them across the dangerous Gyatsola Pass, but the couple never reached their destination. Just 4 hours later, their locked SUV was found abandoned in a dirt parking lot near the start of the mountain trail. A massive search operation, during which rescuers combed through more than 35 square miles of rugged terrain, yielded no results. The eerie silence of the mountains seemed to have swallowed them without a trace. However, exactly 10 days later, on October 22nd at 4:30 a.m., a man appeared in the headlights of a border patrol vehicle. It was Anthony. Exhausted and covered in someone else's blood, he was in a state of deep stupor. But the most terrifying thing was hidden beneath the remnants of his thermal jacket. Deep, inflamed geometric symbols had been carved into the man's bare chest. He monotonously repeated that they had fallen victim to a secret sect of hermits who had executed Becky right before his eyes. This incident could have become the region's most terrifying mystical legend had it not been for one fateful detail noticed by the forensic experts: the perfect symmetry and the specific angle of the blade's tilt on his wounds. A discovery that instantly transformed the tale of mountain fanatics into an investigation of a cold-blooded and ruthless betrayal. October 12, 2024, began as a typical morning in Shigadze. At 7 o'clock a.m., 32-year-old Anthony Willis and his 30-year-old fiancée, Becky Hunt, left their hotel in a rented SUV. Their route took them along Highway G318 toward the remote Tingri County. According to their travel documents, their official purpose was a multi-day hiking trek across the high-altitude Gyatsola Pass, followed by a descent into the Gamma Valley. This route is considered extremely dangerous. The thin air causes hypoxia, and nighttime temperatures drop to 10 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Survival here requires impeccable preparation. At 11:40 a.m., the couple stopped at a mandatory checkpoint in the village of Shekar. According to the testimony of the duty officer of the tourist police, the Americans appeared completely calm. They presented the necessary permits to stay in the border zone and confirmed their declared route. The officer noted in his report that there was mountaineering equipment in the vehicle, and the tourists showed no signs of anxiety. This was the last officially recorded encounter Anthony and Becky had with authorities. Exactly 4 hours later, at 3:40 p.m., a police patrol came across their rented SUV. The vehicle was parked in a deserted dirt lot near the start of a hiking trail leading to the Penchu River Gorge. The engine had been turned off a long time ago, and the metal of the hood had completely cooled down. All the doors were securely locked from the inside, ruling out the possibility of accidental entry. Looking into the interior through the tinted windows, the police officers observed a scene that immediately raised concerns. The tourists' personal belongings and a significant portion of their warm clothing, which is absolutely essential for surviving in the mountains at night, were lying on the back seat. Folders containing documents were visible in the glove compartment. Forensic investigators found no drag marks or signs of a struggle around the car. A strong, icy wind and fine gravel had completely obliterated any shoe prints leading up to the trail. The rescue operation was launched that same evening. At 8 o'clock p.m. sharp, Becky Hunt's relatives in the United States raised the alarm. As agreed, the hikers were supposed to check in via satellite phone at that exact time. When the provider's dispatch service confirmed that the device had not registered on the network, the family immediately contacted the consulate, which in turn contacted the Tingri County Police Department. Aware of the region's unique conditions and the danger posed by every minute lost, local authorities, together with a mountain rescue team, launched a search operation before dawn on October 13th. 4 specialized teams, totaling more than 60 people, were deployed for the active search. They were joined by canine teams with trained dogs and operators of thermal imaging drones capable of scanning the terrain through the fog. Search conditions were extreme. The teams methodically combed through more than 35 square miles of rugged terrain. Rescuers descended into dark crevasses and thoroughly searched the rocky riverbed. However, the search dogs lost the trail just a few hundred feet from the parking lot. Streams of icy air continuously descending from the glaciers instantly dispersed any scent of human presence. On the 3rd day of the operation, the situation became critical. The sky above the pass was shrouded in thick, leaden clouds. A powerful snowstorm began. Gusty winds, reaching speeds of 45 knots, reduced visibility to 0. The air temperature dropped so sharply that remaining outdoors any longer posed a mortal danger to the rescue teams. The operation commander made the only possible decision: to suspend the active phase of the search. Not a single clue or piece of equipment had been found. The mountains swallowed the pair without a trace, leaving the investigators in a complete dead end. Until the icy silence was shattered by the eerie appearance of a man whom everyone had presumed dead. For 10 long days, a deathly silence reigned over the snow-capped peaks of the Gyatsola Pass. Every night, the air temperature steadily dropped to 15 degrees below 0 on the Fahrenheit scale. Hopes that anyone could have survived in the high mountains without basic gear melted away with every passing hour. Large-scale search operations gradually shifted into a phase of passive waiting. Mountain patrols simply continued their rounds, grimly realizing that they were now waiting for the harsh elements to reveal the bodies of the missing hikers on their own. But on October 22, 2024, an event occurred that forever changed the course of this mysterious investigation. At 4:30 a.m., a Border Patrol crew on duty was conducting a routine patrol of a remote area near the Langmala Pass. This location was more than 18 miles from the initial search zone. A sergeant from the local station, who was driving the patrol car that night, later stated in his report that visibility was critically low due to low clouds and a sudden squall. The wheels of the heavy off-road vehicle skidded on the frozen gravel. Suddenly, a bizarre hunched shadow emerged in the bright light of the halogen headlights. On the shoulder of the rutted, rocky road, barely moving its legs and constantly stumbling over stones, a lone human figure was trudging along. The officers immediately slammed on the brakes and rushed toward the stranger through the gusts of icy wind. According to the police report, the man they found showed no reaction at all to the light of their tactical flashlights and could not even say his own name. It was 32-year-old Anthony Willis. His face was covered in a thick layer of dirt, frozen dust, and deep tissue frostbite, and his sunken eyes stared at the patrol officers with a completely empty, glassy gaze. The man was in a state of severe catatonic stupor. He was clad only in the pitiful, frost-stiffened remnants of a torn, expensive thermal jacket that had long since ceased to protect him from the biting cold. When the border guards carefully lifted him under his arms to move him into the warm interior of the vehicle, they noticed an extremely alarming detail. Blood had caked thickly onto the fragments of his remaining synthetic clothing. A visual examination at the scene immediately revealed that Anthony himself did not have any massive open bleeding or lacerations that could explain such a vast number of brown stains soaking into the fabric. The preliminary forensic conclusion was obvious. This blood belonged to someone else. At 6:15 a.m., an ambulance with its sirens blaring transported Anthony to the emergency room of the nearest county hospital. His body was shaking uncontrollably from severe hypothermia, and his pulse was critically low. The medical staff immediately began aggressive resuscitation efforts, setting up intravenous lines. However, the real shock awaited the medical team as they quickly undressed the patient. When the remnants of his outer clothing were cut away for an initial medical examination, a horrific scene was revealed under the bright white light of the surgical lamps. Deep, severely inflamed incisions had been cut into his completely bare, extremely emaciated chest. These gruesome wounds bore no resemblance to accidental scratches from a fall on sharp rocks, or claw marks from a wild animal. Thick, bloody lines clearly formed stark geometric symbols and bizarre runic-like marks that cut deep into the muscle tissue. The dried blood and the purplish-blue edges of the wounds unquestionably indicated that the cuts had been made several days earlier and had already begun to fester due to unsanitary conditions. In the intensive care unit, Anthony barely responded to the doctor's routine questions about how he was feeling or whether he was experiencing any acute pain. According to the transcript of the first interrogation, conducted by the detective on duty from the criminal police right next to his hospital bed, as soon as Anthony was able to speak, his voice sounded completely monotonous, like a mechanical recording. No tears, no emotional outbursts, the kind typically seen in victims of severe violence. The man repeated the same story over and over to the investigator. According to his statements, as recorded in the police report, he and Becky had accidentally strayed from their safe route due to a sudden loss of orientation and immediately fell victim to an attack. Anthony claimed that they had been attacked by a secret high mountain sect of local hermits. He described in detail aggressive fanatics dressed in coarse animal skins who suddenly knocked them unconscious with heavy objects, bound their hands tightly, and dragged them by force into deep stone cells inside the mountain. According to the victim, the cultists held them in complete, cold darkness and subjected them to savage ritual torture, slowly carving occult symbols into his body. The story reached its darkest point when Anthony told the detectives that the savages had brutally executed 30-year-old Becky right before his eyes. He described a bloody sacrifice to an unknown deity, convincing investigators that he himself had miraculously managed to untie the rough ropes binding him and escape into the darkness of the night while his tormentors slept soundly. This story instantly caused a sensation. The information leaked beyond the hospital's secure walls via the technical staff, and by lunchtime, regional police reports had become the basis for television news stories. Journalists began crafting sensational headlines about a bloody Tibetan cult. The story of the American tourist who had survived seemed like the perfect embodiment of a mystical thriller. An isolated, snowy wasteland, brutal cultists, and bloody runes on the body of the sole surviving witness. Local police had already begun assembling additional paramilitary forces for a large-scale armed operation to comb through every cave within a radius of dozens of miles. Meanwhile, in a sterile examination room, the senior forensic medical examiner was methodically completing his work, documenting the evidence. Using special forensic lighting, he took a series of close-up photographs of each individual wound on the patient's chest. As he examined the digital images on a high-resolution monitor, the experienced doctor suddenly frowned. He zoomed in on the image of the largest central mark and froze in front of the screen. Despite the gruesome appearance and Anthony's account of merciless torture in the dark caves, the expert noticed something anomalous. The zoomed-in photos mercilessly revealed that the incisions had perfect, almost drafting board-like symmetry, and the depth and consistent angle of the blade's penetration appeared far too controlled for a situation of chaotic violence, where the victim would have been desperately struggling in the hands of his tormentors. Friends, before we dive into the details of this investigation, I have a small request for you. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a detailed comment below this video, and give it a like. YouTube's modern algorithms are designed so that your activity is what helps promote the content. Thanks to your support, this video will reach a much wider audience, and the channel will be able to create new documentary stories. Thank you for your help. Now let's return to the chilling events in the mountains. After Anthony's condition was stabilized in the intensive care unit, the case officially came under the jurisdiction of the Criminal Division. Senior investigator Li Jian took charge of the investigation. He immediately formed a task force consisting of the province's best forensic analysts. The experienced detective immediately sensed something off about the American's rehearsed story. The perfect tale of a ritual murder and a mystical cult began to unravel rapidly under the merciless glare of the medical lamps. The first serious blow to the mystical legend came from the conclusion of the chief forensic medical examiner. A detailed analysis of photographs of the wounds on Anthony's chest showed that the edges of the cuts bore absolutely no signs of chaotic violence or a struggle. Each line was cut at a specific angle, from top to bottom and from left to right. The expert emphasized that the pressure of the blade clearly weakened toward the end of each cut. This is a classic pattern for wounds inflicted by one's own right hand. Furthermore, the arrangement of the symbols clearly indicated that they were carved while carefully aligning with a mirrored surface. Moreover, the forensic experts highlighted a glaring anomaly. The man's hands, forearms, and palms were completely devoid of defensive wounds, which always remain when a person instinctively shields themselves from an assailant's blade or attempts to wrestle the weapon away. The next inconsistency was discovered within the walls of the toxicology laboratory. Analysis of Anthony's blood samples revealed a complete absence of specific stress markers and enzymes characteristic of a 10-day fast in wild, extremely cold conditions. Instead, experts detected residual traces of high-calorie, concentrated nutritional mixtures in his body. Such components are typically found in extremely expensive military or specialized tourist ration packs. The man who was allegedly being mercilessly starved in damp stone cells had, in fact, been consistently fed all those days. At the same time, the investigation's financial division made an official inquiry to international banking institutions. The results of the account review, which landed on the investigator's desk, put everything in its proper place and provided the investigation with a genuine, real-world motive. It turned out that in September 2024, just 1 month before the fateful trip, Anthony had taken out a massive life insurance policy in Becky Hunt's name, covering accidents under extreme conditions. The payout in the event of her death amounted to $1,800,000. At the same time, it became clear that Willis's own equipment import business had long been in a state of deep crisis, with an officially confirmed debt to creditors totaling over $400,000. His accounts were about to be frozen, and the company was on the brink of collapse. The picture of a bloody ritual had finally vanished into thin air. The man had staged a mystical charade to settle his debts with creditors at the cost of another person's life. But to press formal charges, the detectives needed to find the girl's body and the place where Anthony had been hiding with food supplies for so long. A blind search in the mountains could take years. The investigators turned to digital forensics, hoping to find the slightest lead. While examining log files from high-altitude communication towers, cyber analysts suddenly detected a hidden digital signal that pierced the airwaves for a split second from deep within a remote mountainous area. Armed with irrefutable medical and financial evidence, senior investigator Li Jian shifted his entire investigative team's focus to the technical aspects of the case. The mystical veil had lifted, leaving behind dry, pragmatic forensic analysis. The Cybercrime Division began round-the-clock analysis of massive data dumps obtained from the nearest high-altitude cell towers and orbital surveillance satellites. Engineers searched for any electronic anomalies within a 50-mile radius of where the couple's abandoned SUV had been found. After 36 hours of continuous server operation, radio engineers managed to reconstruct the fragmented, deeply concealed digital signals. It was a standalone global positioning beacon. According to customs declarations and the official list of travel gear the couple had provided at the checkpoint, this device simply wasn't on their list. Someone had deliberately smuggled it in. The beacon activated in extremely short bursts, literally for 3 to 4 seconds once a day, to avoid detection by continuous monitoring systems. The signal was coming from a restricted, extremely dangerous mountainous area located 25 miles south of their official route. A software analysis of the coordinates pinpointed a specific square at the very foot of an old, dormant glacier. It was there, at an altitude of over 14,000 feet, that the long-abandoned Kangshung Geological Exploration Base was located, a facility that had been officially closed back in the 1980s. An elite search and forensic team immediately set out for the site in 2 heavy-lift transport helicopters. The flight through the thin air was extremely difficult. When the helicopters landed on the frozen plateau, a bleak scene greeted the operatives. The Kangshung base consisted of several dilapidated wooden barracks that blended almost completely into the gray, lifeless mountain landscape. Most of the buildings were completely empty. Their roofs had long since collapsed under the weight of snow, and the walls were pierced by an icy wind whose speed never dropped below 20 knots. However, one of the distant warehouses on the edge of the camp caught the assault team's attention. From the outside, it looked just as abandoned, but a portable thermal imager revealed a residual temperature difference. When the armed forensic investigators, braced for any aggressive scenario, broke down the heavy, rust-covered doors, they found themselves not in a filthy lair of mountain cultists at all. Before them lay a meticulously prepared, professional hideout. Cracks in the walls had been methodically sealed with insulating caulk, blocking drafts. Inside, they found an expensive portable gas heater, substantial supplies of drinking water in plastic gallon containers, and dozens of empty packages from specialized high-calorie meal kits. These were precisely the concentrated rations whose chemical traces had been detected in Anthony's blood the day before during a toxicological analysis. On an old, rickety wooden table in the center of the room lay the instrument that struck the greatest fear into the entire investigative team. It was a professional surgical scalpel. Next to it lay open vials of a potent medical antiseptic, bandages, and painkillers. Experts could see traces of dried blood on the thin steel blade with the naked eye. It was a perfectly organized, quiet place. Here, the criminal could comfortably wait out a large-scale search, staying completely warm and safe, while dozens of rescuers risked their lives dozens of miles away, battling snowstorms. Forensic investigators began a detailed examination of the room. Once the windows were tightly covered with black plastic sheeting and the chemical reagent luminol was sprayed over the wooden floor, ultraviolet lamps revealed a chilling truth. Nearly a third of the room glowed a bright, neon blue. The traces revealed broad, sweeping motions. Someone had spent many hours trying to scrub the biological fluids off the wood with a stiff brush. Experts in protective suits methodically collected swabs from these areas, placed them in sterile test tubes, and immediately sent them via special flight for express genotype analysis to the Central Forensic Laboratory. But the real jackpot awaited the team as they inspected the structure of the shack itself. One of the operatives noticed that the metal nails in a loose floorboard near the back wall were brand new and showed no signs of rust. After prying up the plank with a tactical crowbar, the investigators discovered a deep hiding place. There lay a neatly rolled-up waterproof bag. Upon unrolling it, the detectives found scraps of printed, detailed satellite maps of the area. Marked by hand with a black marker on them were the visibility zones of thermal imaging drones and approximate flight paths. The killer knew exactly when the rescue workers would be scanning that area and stayed indoors ahead of time. A cell phone lay next to the satellite maps. The serial number on the back was quickly run through a secure police database. The device officially belonged to the missing Becky Hunt. The phone had been deliberately and roughly damaged, the screen smashed to pieces with a heavy object, and the SIM card had been prudently removed from the tray. The place, which according to legend was supposed to be invisible proof of the existence of savage cultists, had ultimately turned into the meticulously planned workshop of a cold-blooded, calculating killer. The senior forensic technician carefully placed the broken phone into an anti-static evidence bag. The display was completely destroyed, but the motherboard, with its internal memory chip, appeared visually intact. The officers exchanged silent glances in the semi-darkness of the barracks, realizing one simple thing. The dead piece of plastic in their hands was about to speak, and that conversation was bound to be fatal for some. While technical experts were meticulously gathering the final pieces of evidence at the abandoned Kangshung base, Anthony Willis was officially discharged from the county hospital. Under a tight escort of armed officers, the man was transported to a secure interrogation room at the county's Central Police Headquarters. It was a cramped, utterly cold room with no windows, its walls covered in massive gray soundproofing panels. Anthony sat at a heavy metal table securely bolted to the floor, continuing to play the role of a broken, deeply traumatized victim. He nervously tugged at the hem of his uniform, waiting for the conversation to begin, until the steel door swung open. Senior investigator Li Jian entered the room completely silently. The experienced detective's face betrayed no emotion. He wasn't about to waste precious time on lengthy psychological games or empty small talk. The investigator simply turned on the video camera in silence and placed two thick folders on the table. The time had come for a harsh confrontation with irrefutable physical evidence. Methodically, step by step, the investigator began laying out printed color photographs in front of the suspect. Photos of an isolated barrack, a running gas heater, empty packages of specialized field rations, and a professional surgical scalpel. According to the official interrogation transcript, Anthony instantly turned pale. His breathing became ragged, but he stubbornly remained silent. Next to be placed on the table was an expert report from forensic trace evidence analysts regarding the specific angles of the blade's inclination during the infliction of the wounds. But Li Jian saved his most decisive blow for the finale. The detective laid out before Willis a detailed analysis of his own bloody scars. The cryptography and cybersecurity experts had done a brilliant job. They had proven beyond a doubt that the geometric lines on the American's chest were not at all runes of ancient deities or symbols of a wild Tibetan cult. They were skillfully disguised GPS coordinates and a multi-digit access code to an anonymous safe deposit box located in the United States of America. The investigation conclusively established that Anthony had methodically carved these marks into his own body, carefully using a mirrored surface as a guide. He took such a radical, painful step in order to always have reliable instructions on hand for collecting a massive insurance payout, while simultaneously simulating brutal ritual torture to convincingly feign amnesia in front of law enforcement officials. The criminal case file also included financial reports that unequivocally confirmed his severe business crisis and debts to creditors totaling over $400,000. The final, devastating blow came in the form of an urgent report from geneticists. Li Jian read it aloud. Molecular DNA analysis of a smudged bloodstain found under the floorboards in an abandoned barracks matched the genetic profile of the missing Becky Hunt by 99.9%. The legend of bloodthirsty hermits clad in animal skins was shattered in a matter of minutes. Realizing that the story about savages no longer held water and that he had been driven into a corner, Willis abruptly changed his tactics. Feigning a deep, uncontrollable fit of hysteria, he covered his face with his hands and declared that a terrible, irreparable mistake had been made. His new testimony, recorded on camera, differed radically from his previous statements. Now, Anthony claimed that Becky had tragically died as a result of a simple accident. According to his new account, during the hike, the girl simply slipped on a treacherous glacier and unexpectedly fell from a slippery cliff into a bottomless abyss. He convinced the investigator that he was in a state of deep emotional distress, and because of his enormous financial debt, he was terrified of the inevitable charges of intentional murder. That is why he allegedly made the impulsive decision to stage a kidnapping, hiding her personal belongings and taking refuge in a warm barracks to avoid prison. Anthony begged to be believed, desperately hoping to reduce a serious criminal case to a simple cover-up of an accident. But he failed to account for one critical detail: his dead fiancé's broken phone. While the suspect was concocting a new, multi-layered lie in a cold interrogation room, forensic experts from the technical department were able to fully decrypt the internal memory of Becky's phone. There they found a new lead that was absolutely devastating for him. Deep within the Messenger app's hidden logs was a cached record of Anthony's correspondence with a third party, which had previously been accidentally synced to the young woman's device. This unknown contact turned out to be 40-year-old Declan Mercer. In tight-knit criminal circles, Mercer was a well-known illegal logistics operator who professionally organized secure smuggling routes, bypassing official border crossings. According to the decrypted text messages, it was Declan who was supposed to personally meet Anthony at the border with ready-made forged documents and ensure a reliable gray corridor for the safe transfer of insurance money to unreachable offshore zones. The police clearly realized they were dealing with a perfectly planned conspiracy. But now the investigators faced a new, extremely complex task: to intercept the professional criminal before he learned of the inevitable failure and vanished into the shadows forever. By cross-referencing the massive amount of geolocation data, the exact time of the satellite beacon's brief activity, and the fully decrypted cache files from the cell phone, the investigative task force was able to reconstruct the events of that terrible day minute by minute. The picture that gradually emerged before the detectives on the analytical monitors at police headquarters was striking in its inhuman cynicism and the fanatical attention to detail in the planning. Experienced investigators saw no evidence of a crime of passion, no sudden argument that got out of hand, and no tragic accident in this case. It was the utterly cold, mathematical calculation of a man who consciously and methodically decided to trade the young woman's life for freedom from his own colossal financial debts. On October 12, 2024, immediately after getting out of a rental car at a remote dirt parking lot, Anthony Willis began cold-bloodedly carrying out his deadly plan. According to reconstructed GPS waypoints, he immediately persuaded Becky to stray from the safe, marked tourist trail. Under the pretext of searching for unique, exclusive photo locations far from the noisy groups of other travelers, he deliberately lured the girl into a remote, extremely dangerous section of the mountain gorge. Even the most experienced local guides rarely ventured into this part of the mountains due to the high risk of rockfalls. They walked for several hours straight, climbing higher and higher into the dead zone of the eternal glaciers. They scaled steep, rocky slopes at an altitude of over 15,000 feet, where the thin air burned their lungs and where there had been no cell phone signal for a long time. Anthony led her to a place where no one could hear a cry for help. But Willis's perfect plan suddenly suffered a fatal crack, ahead of his own schedule. During a brief rest on a rocky plateau, Becky accidentally reached into his heavy mountaineering backpack. A digital reconstruction by investigators, based on the arrangement of items and the last photos from her camera, suggests that she was simply looking for spare batteries. Instead, at the very bottom of the backpack, her hand felt a thick, sealed package. Upon opening it, she saw something that was absolutely not meant for her eyes. Inside were high-quality forged passports under a completely different name, printouts of massive IOUs, and original notarized documents for a life insurance policy on her own life for an incredible sum. In one brief, terrifying second, Becky realized the full, horrific truth. This romantic pre-wedding trip to the other side of the world had been a meticulously planned death trap. The man she trusted had brought her here to be slaughtered. Right at the edge of the icy abyss, a fierce, desperate argument broke out instantly. Forensic experts, analyzing the nature of the micro-damage on the hiking gear and the remaining traces, determined that the young woman had frantically tried to escape. But at such an extreme altitude, with a lack of oxygen and heavy clothing, it was physically impossible. Realizing that he had been exposed and that his grand financial scheme was crumbling right before his eyes, Anthony did not hesitate for a moment. Fearing inevitable exposure, financial ruin, and a life sentence, he grabbed his heavy mountaineering ice axe with its sharp steel blade. Quickly approaching from behind, the killer delivered a devastating blow to the back of the girl's head. According to police forensic experts, death occurred almost instantly due to massive fractures of the skull. After the body fell onto the snow, Anthony showed no signs of remorse. He acted like a machine. The man cold-bloodedly dragged his fiancée's body to the nearest deep glacial crevasse and simply tossed it into the dark abyss. He sincerely hoped that tons of snow and millennia-old ice would forever bury the key evidence of his horrific guilt. Afterward, the killer calmly descended to the abandoned Kangshung base. For the next 8 days, he sat completely at ease in a warm, isolated barracks, eating expensive rations. There, he methodically cut into his own skin with a sharp surgical scalpel, fabricating a flawless alibi involving an attack by mystical cultists, and patiently waited for the rescue team to officially declare the active search over. The criminal puzzle at the police department finally came together into a single, indisputable picture of the crime. The investigation had a real motive, the murder weapon, a precise chronology of events, and even a bizarre confession written in digital coordinates directly on the suspect's body. However, this was critically insufficient for a jury trial. Without a key witness who could confirm a conspiracy, or without the victim's body itself, the most expensive defense attorneys would easily have turned this case into a legal farce, attributing all of the defendant's actions to severe psychosis and mountain-induced hallucinations. The criminal police department needed ironclad evidence, securely hidden deep within the ice. But only one man held the key to this evidence. A man who, at that very moment, was trying to vanish forever into the shadows of the dangerous borderlands. Upon receiving the name of the key accomplice, the Criminal Division's task force acted with lightning speed, leaving the criminals no chance to regroup or escape. On October 28, 2024, at 4:30 p.m., the final stage of the high-stakes interception began. The scene of the dangerous operation was a dusty, rutted road at the exit of the border village of Karung. For decades, this remote route had served as the main artery for illicit trafficking and illegal border crossings. The police deployed an elite unit of the Border Special Forces. When the dusty black SUV driven by 40-year-old Declan Mercer approached the old stone bridge, the trap snapped shut instantly. Heavy armored vehicles from the tactical unit tightly blocked the road in front and behind, cutting off any escape routes. Armed officers smashed the side window and pulled the smuggler from behind the wheel in a matter of seconds, slamming him face down onto the cold asphalt. According to the official police report, Mercer was so shocked by the suddenness of the raid that he didn't even have time to reach for the gun lying nearby. During a thorough forensic search of his vehicle, detectives completely removed the plastic door paneling. In hidden compartments, they found thick, vacuum-sealed bags containing a substantial amount of cash in $100 bills. But the most crucial piece of evidence was a sturdy cardboard folder, carefully hidden under the driver's seat. Inside were notarized copies of the very same insurance policies for enormous sums that Anthony Willis had signed the day before his fateful trip. That same evening, Mercer was taken to headquarters and placed in a cold concrete cell in the temporary detention facility. As a professional logistics specialist in the underworld, he was used to working under constant risk. But the prospect of spending the rest of his life behind bars in solitary confinement changed everything. When the lead investigator silently placed the seized insurance policies and printouts of messages in front of him, Mercer instantly assessed his hopeless situation. Facing the imminent threat of formal charges of complicity and first-degree murder, he finally broke down. Realizing that Anthony had botched the perfect scheme and left a trail of evidence, the smuggler decided to save his own skin. According to the audio recording of the interrogation, Mercer agreed to a formal plea deal with the investigators. He provided the police with precise satellite coordinates, a specific square on the unforgiving glacial plateau that Willis had previously sent him via an encrypted messenger app as 100% confirmation that the bloody job had been carried out successfully. With the exact coordinates in hand, the search operation gained new, unstoppable momentum. The next morning, rescue teams, significantly reinforced by professional cavers and forensic experts, returned to the high mountains. They brought heavy, specialized equipment, powerful industrial winches, and hundreds of feet of sturdy climbing rope. In the area indicated by Mercer, the landscape looked completely monotonous, like a lifeless white desert. However, relying strictly on geolocation data, the search team discovered a narrow, extremely deep crevasse in an ancient glacier. It was almost completely hidden by a fresh layer of snow from a recent blizzard, creating the perfect natural tomb. The descent operation lasted over 4 hours, amid a biting, icy wind. Using a complex system of winches, a team of 3 specialists was slowly lowered into the dark, eerie, icy shaft. At an incredible depth of about 60 feet, where the surrounding temperature remained at critically low levels, the light from powerful headlamps revealed a bright spot amid the blue ice. It was a hiking jacket. At the very bottom of the crevasse, amid the debris of permafrost, lay the frozen body of 30-year-old Becky Hunt. The extreme mountain cold had acted as a perfect natural freezer, flawlessly preserving all the irrefutable evidence of a horrific crime. The initial forensic examination, meticulously conducted in a special mobile crime scene tent immediately after the body was painstakingly hoisted to the surface, left no doubt as to the cause of death. The medical examiner confirmed a massive, fatal fracture of the occipital bone of the skull. The injury was inflicted by an extremely heavy, blunt object with a distinct, sharp edge. The profile of the wound perfectly matched that of a mountaineering ice axe. The nature of the hemorrhage in the surrounding tissues unequivocally confirmed that the horrific blow was struck while the victim was still alive, precisely from behind, at a moment when the victim was completely unaware of the danger. This medical conclusion completely and permanently refuted Anthony's false account of an accidental fall or a tragic accident on an unstable slope. But the most important, decisive piece of evidence was found a little later, during a detailed laboratory examination of the clothing under a high-powered electron microscope. On the synthetic fabric of the deceased girl's jacket hood, forensic experts discovered tiny, foreign microparticles of extraneous fibers that had become deeply embedded in the material during the fatal blow. Comparative chemical analysis yielded a 100% match. These microfibers belonged to expensive tactical gloves, the very same specific gloves that were seized from Anthony Willis during his arrest. and which he had tried unsuccessfully to wash off with chemicals in an abandoned barracks. The investigation successfully pieced together all the scattered fragments of this bloody puzzle into a single picture. The case was solved, and the body of evidence had become as unshakable as a granite monolith. Armed officers from the Criminal Investigation Department, with a signed warrant in hand, headed toward the detention cell to formally charge Anthony. They walked with quick, confident strides. But Senior Investigator Li Jian, looking at the CCTV feed, suddenly turned pale and sharply ordered them to draw their weapons immediately. When the armed officers from the Criminal Division, led by Senior Investigator Li Jian, kicked down the heavy metal door of the holding cell, they arrived just in the nick of time. On the CCTV screen, the detective saw 32-year-old Anthony Willis, realizing the complete and inevitable collapse of his perfect plan, attempting to take his own life using a torn prison sheet. Aggressive resuscitation efforts and timely medical intervention brought him back to consciousness. The justice system had no intention of allowing a cold-blooded killer to evade responsibility so easily. The man was stabilized, transferred to a special cell, and placed under round-the-clock surveillance until the trial began. The high-profile trial officially began in March 2025. This criminal case instantly captured the close attention of the global media. The public was shocked, not so much by the brutal crime itself, as by the defendant's incredible, inhuman cynicism. Anthony Willis attempted to conceal the greedy, self-serving murder of his own fiancée behind an exotic, mystical facade, cynically exploiting the ancient culture of Tibet as a convenient backdrop for his sordid financial scheme. Throughout the trial, sitting in the dock in an orange prison jumpsuit, he maintained a completely cold, impassive expression, never once glancing in the direction of the murdered girl's relatives. The prosecution was fully prepared to dismantle any of his manipulative arguments. The lead prosecutor methodically built a monolithic wall of irrefutable direct evidence before the jury. First, reconstructed surveillance footage was shown in the courtroom. In these clips, dated late September 2024, Anthony was seen purchasing a portable gas heater, high-calorie camping rations, and the very same professional surgical scalpel that was later found in a hiding place at the Kangshung base. Afterward, the province's chief forensic pathologist addressed the jury. Using an anatomical model, the expert demonstrated the complex mechanics involved in inflicting the wounds by hand. He proved with mathematical precision that no other person, whoever they might be, could physically have carved the marks on the defendant's chest at such a specific angle. The wounds were inflicted exclusively by the defendant's own right hand, with a uniform reduction in blade pressure. The last two pieces of evidence proved most devastating to the defense. The first was the results of an expanded molecular analysis of the mountaineering ice axe. Despite the fact that Anthony had thoroughly washed it with harsh chemicals, forensic scientists found residual traces of blood from 30-year-old Becky Hunt in the microcracks of the sturdy metal. The final nail in the coffin for this case was the personal testimony of 40-year-old Declan Mercer. Under oath, the smuggler gave the court a detailed account of the cynical financial conspiracy, the preparation of forged passports, and the carefully devised plan to flee abroad. After 2 weeks of intense hearings, the jury retired to the deliberation room. Their verdict was unanimous, and the deliberations took less than 4 hours. The court found 32-year-old Anthony Willis fully guilty of first-degree murder with particular cruelty, tampering with evidence, and insurance fraud on an exceptionally large scale. The judge handed down a mandatory sentence: life imprisonment in a maximum security prison without the possibility of parole. His accomplice, 40-year-old Declan Mercer, received a 14-year prison sentence for his role in the conspiracy. Thus ended the story of a murder that was undone by the ruthless precision of science and investigation. Anthony Willis was transferred to an isolated maximum security wing, where he was to spend the rest of his life in a 60-square-foot cell. Becky Hunt's family finally received a fragile sense of justice, and the files from the high-profile case were sent to the archives. It seemed as though the story had ended once and for all. However, 8 months after the sentencing, during a surprise search of Anthony's cell, guards discovered a homemade notebook under his mattress. The pages were densely filled with precise GPS coordinates pointing to unexplored caves in remote national parks across the United States. And next to 5 specific coordinates, in neat handwriting, were dates from past years and the names of young women who were still officially listed as missing.